All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first online lecture for this semester for the unit PG428, Foreign Policy in PNG. And we are once again joined by our sessional lecturer, Mr. Lawi Yako, all the way from Port Moresby. And we are here in Madang. This in this session, he'll talk about foreign policy, what is foreign policy, defining the concept, and he'll draw from his practical experience and share from his understanding. And if you want to get more information about his bio, his background, we have a page on Moodle, on our Moodle unit webpage, the learning guide. And there's a chapter that is solely dedicated to information about his career path, his experience in the public service. So please, I encourage you to read the page to know more about Mr. Ako. So without further delay, I'll hand over the virtual microphone to him. But after we leave the Q&A for question and answer session to after his presentation. After he concludes, then we'll give you time to ask your questions and comments. So without further delay, Mr. Ako, the virtual microphone is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Egiora. Morning through Lolgeta. It's going to be another exciting semester for all of us this year, this remaining part of the day, and I'm really looking forward to it, especially with the especially at this point in time when we will have a new foreign policy white paper, and the other security arrangements happening all at the same time. As we speak, there's this security exercise happening in Australia right now that involves about 10 nations. So that will have a impact on how we impact foreign policy. Okay, so as Mr. Aguirre said, this will be our main. I'll be talking most from this book. And the main reference of our lecture this semester will be based on this, like I said, which I put together in 2022. Ironically, the chapters of this book was compiled after the 2021 lecture series. It's the first time Mr. Aguirre invited me to be part of this whole process, and I had a lot of bits and pieces of paper lying around after the 2021 lecture. So in order to keep these notes safe, I decided to lock them up in a book. And the outcome is what you see in front of you all. Okay. You would all know by now that the publishing of this book galvanized the government into action in August. So this book was published in 2022. And then in August 2022, when the new government came on board, they all started talking about foreign policy this, foreign policy white paper that, all that stuff. And it so happened that the lecture series in 2021 kicked that idea off. So sometimes I wonder if the foreign policy lectures had not been had, and then this book had not been published. I mean, would the government have done the foreign policy review? It's something we all have to think about, because I can say that nothing was thought about. There was no thoughts on foreign policy review. There was no talk on foreign policy review until the D1 word foreign policy lectures came about and this book materialized. Then everyone started jumping up and down about foreign policy this and foreign policy that. Okay, so we'll continue. So you all would have known by now and read what a foreign policy is, what it does. According to Britannica.com, their definition of foreign policy is foreign policy is or are general objectives that guide the activities and relationships of one state in its interactions with another state, other states. Its development is influenced by domestic considerations, the policies or behavior of other states, or plans to advance specific geopolitical designs. So you all have done your practice foreign policies. So this would be in line with what you are talking about. Former Secretary Bill Dim and Ted Wolfers, whom we will talk about as we go along, this was their definition of foreign policy making. Ted Wolfers was the one whom the government contracted in 1981 to do the foreign policy review. Okay, so what's in a name? When we unpack all those definitions and bring them down, foreign policy is simply a country's game plan on how to play internationally, using its domestic resources, both human, materials, natural and man-made, and wealth. The white paper confirms that we do have a game plan to play bilaterally and multilaterally, because it shows on paper, it's our intent. Okay, so when you don't have a plan in life, then look at something but come up. I mean, all of us went to the university system, and all of us plan to go to university. I mean, all of you sitting there, or you just front up there and said you want to go to school. No, you planned it. As you went through your secondary education, you said, I'll go to uni. You started having a plan. And some would have written it up. Some would have not. Talking about university students, when my son was going to graduate in his grade 10 graduation, I told him we both of us made a plan and said, okay, you owe me 4 graduations. So once done, you have 1 more and another 3 more to go. So those are the plans that we put in life. Okay, so everything must have a plan, and for a country to interact with another country or a group of countries or organization, there must be a plan in place, and that plan is called foreign policy. Okay, so how do you play internationally? So you play internationally, how do you play it? So when we use rugby league Topic1, playing internationally in international relations would mean bilateral, denoting a rugby league test between the PNG Comuns and maybe the Fiji Bati, one-on-one, or multilaterally, which denotes a tournament, as in the Rugby League World Cup, where the PNG Comuns could be in a pool of 3 other, in a pool made up of 3 other international teams. So then that's the layout of the land of what the international system looks like. You go bilaterally, you have your bilateral one-on-ones with say New Zealand, or you go multilaterally where you go to an organization like APEC, which has 21 member economies, and you become part of the 21. How do you drive the national interest? How do you drive Papua New Guinea's national interest in those settings? You must have a plan to do that, and not a plan, so you must have plans to do it, plural. So, like on the screen, you can see, so how do we manage our development cooperation multilaterally and not bilaterally? How do we translate this to add value to our domestic policies? How do we then further translate this into our own bilateral cooperation with other developing and or less developed economies? Note that over the last 30 years, governments have also supported the Solomon Islands, or we continue to do so through aid or education grant or something. And before we do that, are we adequately trained to play in these competitions? If so, what competitions can we play, and what competitions should we not, and allow others to play for us on our behalf? And what level of competitions can we play? And for those we are unable to do so, which bilateral partners should we ask to play on our behalf? So we continue to add value to our domestic economic development agenda. Or what multilateral organizations should we join to drive this national interest? You don't just say, having a foreign policy of friends to or enemy to none. Then you are talking about joining all the multilateral organizations, becoming friends with all the countries. How do you manage that? Do we have the resources to manage it? Huh? If you want to become friends to an enemy to none, and how do you manage a call for assistance by a country which is not a bilateral partner or a friend of one of our larger development partners? How do you manage it? So those are the type of things when you have a foreign policy intent you need to look at before you start cascading the responsibilities down to the actual operationalization planning process. So right up to September 16, 2025, Papua New Guinea's foreign policy white paper was the active and selective engagement foreign policy. It had a white paper to it, and it was government called the experts up in 1980, 1981. They wrote it up, and by 1982, it was endorsed by Parliament, and it became Papua New Guinea's foreign policy. That paper. Now, PNG's foreign policy on APEC, which was done in 2020, and its driver, the roadmap, which was to domesticate the outcomes of APEC 2018 leaders' statement, was the last foreign policy undertaken by government. People may not agree, and experts in PNG's international relations will say it wasn't a foreign policy. More line working number will put in, but it was endorsed by cabinet in its decision 36/2020, and it became that foreign policy, like I said, a plan. It became the plan which our government officials used to play in APEC. So from 2020 on, our officials attended with purpose, attended their APEC obligations with purpose. How to go about working in the relevant committees of APEC, how to drive Papua New Guinea's agenda in the working groups, and all that. And if there are policy undertakings to be done, where to do it. And this domestication roadmap was based on the MTDP 3 and then 4. So the roadmap has to be reviewed now because of the new MTDP 4, and it has to be aligned accordingly to that. So from 1982 up to today, there were foreign policy statements present in Parliament, but no white paper. So that puts the it provides inconveniences. Why I say inconveniences? Because because there was no foreign policy white paper, it now depended on the whims of the mostly not the prime minister, but the foreign minister. So if the foreign minister was aligned, if the foreign minister was not comfortable doing business with this particular country, then Papua New Guinea's foreign policy will go according to the way he thinks. And then if there's another change in government, or there's a ministerial portfolio reshuffles, and then a new foreign minister comes on board, and then he or she will go according to his whims, and the bureaucrats will just have to follow simply because there was no white paper. The 1982 white paper of selective engagement was interpreted all that way, right up from 1982, right up to now. And we will also note along in the rest of the years we converse, we will come to know about how the PNG's foreign policy on APEC was drafted, and how it earmarked, how it took on the active and selective engagement, and just picked out the main economic committees and working groups which we thought PNG could gain value from. Okay, so that's the concept of foreign policy. There's also for bigger and larger countries, they do not have a foreign policy covering everything, but they have foreign policies made up for particular engagements. Like the US had a foreign policy on COVID. Others would have foreign policy engagements on climate change, how they intend to do that. For us, our current foreign policy 2025, which hopefully gets launched soon, was made up by experts who had a total number of years in experience, two, 300 years total of experience, and it has to be taken seriously. And it's a high level intent. So the biggest work starts when you start operationalizing it. And operationalizing it means going back to, let me see, these questions. That's how you operationalize it. And note very well that to operationalize it, you need to bring in your players. Going back to the PNG Kumul's example. So the Papua New Guinea national selectors will choose their best 25 traveling representative. Okay. So based on the skills, capability, blow all one players, or scale him, go on, all confirming, they'll pick that final team. It might be a good selection according to people, it might not be a good selection. But that is how the selectors picked it. Based on criterias, can that person tackle, what's his stamina? So based on those criteria, I'm pretty sure they would have shortlisted players per position, and then they chose the best. So they went. So let's use the last World Cup in England, where Coach Stanley Teppen was the coach. So Coach Stanley Teppen would have gone with an overall game plan in his mind. So M foreign policy blame now. Stanley Teppen, Karim go to England. Now once M was stopped, he also knows that in the pool which PNG Kumul was in, there were another 3 teams, or another 2 teams, or let's say 3 teams. One would be, let's say, Australia. The other one would be, let's say, Lebanon. And another would be, let's say, France. So then automatically he would know that Australia is the biggest challenge. Lebanon, we can beat maybe, and also same for the French. So he will start strategizing. He will now go back to these questions. These main questions is, so how do I manage these teams? How do I manage the PNG Kumul's selection so that we can win in this multilateral engagement? And I brought in 25 players. How do I use their strength and capability to add value to our domestic aspirations, which means PNG must win so that we win the tournament? And then he goes further. How do we then translate this value into their actual game on the field? And then now, this is that's the reason why I like using the rugby league example. Then, so now you pick your first 17 to play to play in a multilateral setting, but in a bilateral set against Australia. So now you know that you need to beat Australia, and you've also done your studies on the capability of the other side. And now you need to break it up into defense and attack. You see, so you keep on breaking down things further and further, right up to the actual nuts and bolts of winning the game. And that's how foreign policy and international relations should be viewed, in my opinion. You don't just say that here's the foreign policy white paper. You're gonna go walk him now. How are you supposed to go and do it? Is the government department you entrusted? Is it adequately trained? What is the age grouping in there? Who are the players you have in there? Most of them in their late 50s, or what is the bulk of the playing population you have in there? Are they in their 30s and 40s, which means they are all ready to go abroad and push Papua New Guinea's agenda? And in doing so, do you have your forwards? Do you have your backs? Do you have your reserves? If you watch the Storms, do you have your that small looking someone player called Falongo? Coach Craig Bellamy brings him on every now and then, and he goes in and 90% of the time he scores. He's not that big, but he scores. Do we have those players in our team? Someone who can go and convince the other side and tell him, no, please, you must vote with us because we are supporting this. Please vote. Those are what we mean by adequately trained. When I set up the APEC Secretariat and I chose my team, I was given 10 preferences. When I went around the departments asking for this, they said, no, I'm member of the and this plan officer, no God. So who can you give me? So I was given their 10 choices. And those 10 choices made up my 20-man team that drove APEC. They drove the APEC agenda all the way right up to the drafting and writing up the declaration, which was converted into a foreign policy. And what we did, we trained them. We practically trained them. I taught them how to write deep notes. I taught them how to go and organize bilateral meetings in the international settings. We literally came out during our bonding walks every Sunday afternoon, which we walked from Maila Beach all the way to Coney and back in a group, tight group, discussing how to play. If we were having a battle with New Zealand, who do we match up with? How do we drive this agenda? New Zealand is more agricultural and they are small, but they are effective. How do we talk about our agriculture stuff? All those things we discussed and we trained. We usually sat down together most times at the Oakley House, our old office, for lunch or sometimes dinner if we were working late together, like in the house. No rank, we sit down, we talk. So we started bonding and they were so mighty, super effective. Right up to now, most of them are all holding good positions in government, some in the private sector. People like Deborah Sungi, who's the head of the CCDA, they were all part of the APEC team. And then time MIPLA was sort of training, now we look outside. And that's when you start talking with your bilateral partner. That's where this last bullet, not this one. No, sorry. Yeah, the last bullet point, where when we were sort of training, we started looking around for people to say, and we had about 11 bilateral partners all putting up their hand to support Papua New Guinea to host APEC. So then we had a discussion with Australia. Australia agreed. So we sent 52 of them down to Australia, 26 to the University of Queensland, 26 to the University of Adelaide. The ones who, the A team who went to Adelaide went to learn how to do, write up a graduate diploma in trade. The B team that went to Queensland Uni was on international relations. Now A and B is not the big team, the Lily team. No, A team is because of Adelaide. A. B team is because of Brisbane. So the B team was in Queensland, the A team was in Adelaide. And when they all came back, we all sat down and I told them, okay, tell me how you can anyone want him something. Did you meet the line in business? Okay, then write up the declaration. So I gave them the draft I wrote, and they all write in, go. And that APEC leader statement, which you see on Google, was written by all those TED-rated officers. So now you can understand the maneuvering within government to advance your priorities and the funding that goes in between. Okay. So the final slide is on next steps. So this last half an hour, we've been talking about next steps. Okay. And I guess your exercise, which you did, you wrote a lot of ideas on next steps. And those next steps are not only one level. The next steps will go down maybe 10 levels to right down to the village level. How do you translate that foreign policy? Okay. An example. You have you have a bilateral partner saying that we have funding here, grants to provide water projects. How do you go about ensuring that that funding of water projects go out to the village level? Because now you have to prioritize Embagolo, one in province, no, one in place. Which is why we need people at planning or maybe local level governments, also department to have a broad mindset and not to be very traditionalistic. One plus something come to Karimbola Hanobara. So Miblo Hanobara. So any project come Karimbola Hanobara. No can Karimbola Tatana Obara. Just go stopping Hanobara. You want government officials who can deliver services without fear or favor to everyone. So when this situation happens, how are you going to manage that? Now, 75% of mitigating that will come from the plan. So once you talk about you have a foreign policy that covers domestic issues, and then you break it down into strategic action plans and then work plans and scheduling, it goes right down there. And once it's endorsed, that's it. Once it's the funding coming, you just roll it out to all those activities which you listed down. So no one can divert it unless, of course, at the political level, you and I have no say. So if it's priority to divert that, convert that the funding for water tank into funding for roads, then start between the high level decision makers between PNG and the development partner. If they decide to divert that money into something else, and that's a prerogative. But in a normal sense, that's how you will organize, operationalize, and domesticate any foreign policy activity. I'll stop there and I'll give it back to Mr. Egiora. Thank you very much. Class?
Okay, thank you to Mr. Ako. You've heard from Mr. Ako and has given us a good explanation of what foreign policy is, drawing from his own experience in the public service in APEC as the Director General for the APEC Secretariat. The floor is now open for questions, comments, and please make sure you specify. I have a comment, or this is a question, so I add that to my tally. So I'm able to distinguish a comment from a question. So the floor is now open for questions, comments from the class. You can use the raise icon function or just wave your hands like this so we know that you have a, for those who are, the videos are on and those videos are off, you can use the raise hand function to indicate that you have something to say. All right, so floor open for questions, comments.
Ask anything. Ask me anything.
So, Essie, we'll start with Essie. Essie or Valentine? We'll start with Essie and then we'll go to Valentine.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Egera and Mr. Ako. I just have two questions in mind. So, my first question is it is on foreign policy. Like, can we, as a country, can we create a foreign policy where we can attract investment or attract people to come and, like, it's not like we're creating a foreign policy to go out and interact with people, but can we create a foreign policy where we can attract other countries to come in and invest in our country, like an economic foreign policy or something like that? And My second question is on the white paper, PNG white paper foreign policy 2025. I'm just curious. I just want to know who is responsible for the formulation of that white paper foreign policy and who will be responsible for its implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tika, for that question. Your first question number one on creating a foreign policy and investment, that can be easily done by the trade policy. Yeah, which is spearheaded by the Department of the National Trade Office, NTO, and also the Department of International Trade and Investment. So the trade policy and the foreign policy will work hand in hand, which is why when I mentioned that I sent those two groups of students down, one para online go learning trade policy law Adelaide, the other one went to learn foreign policy at Queensland Uni. Because the one at Queensland Uni was basically on international relations. So they will work hand in hand to support the foreign policy. The foreign policy is the one which, if you were in the Department of Education now and you had an international conference to attend, you will go to the international conference with that foreign policy. And then you divert it down to your education department's, your terms of reference in the education department and the strategic intent of the Department of Education. So time you go sit down, and when the agenda is, or you already know the agenda, so when the agenda has been discussed, and at a particular agenda, you will, if it doesn't match with our foreign policy and our MTDP4, you will put up the flag and say, no, PNG doesn't agree because MIPLA also much. That's what you're going to talk about. People have a tendency of going to conferences, na pass your mouse, na nod, na be a conference finish, come back, na complain. So when the taxpayers send you abroad, all salimi was a mouse man. You must go and talk. If you cannot talk, then do not go. You can go. Why? Because once you go into a conference setting, there is the PNG flag there or put in. Flag blue or PNG name or put in the front. And when the chair comes and sits down and he looks across, he will say, oh, I welcome every one of you here. I know it's going to be a very interesting conference. But in story good. Thank you for coming to my country and please invest a lot in my country before you go back. So now we'll start with agenda item number one. So you will make sure that those 7 or 10 or 20 agenda, PNG must start crossing the list. And then as you go by agenda, and even if PNG's position aligns with that agenda and someone already mentioned, you put him hand, na talk. You must be head. Why? Because the minute takers will also say PNG spokesman talk also. PNG spokesman talk also. Which is the reason why when you look at when we were establishing the APEC Secretary and going, we had no examples to back up on. The amount of document which our previous people went up, there was nil. There was no briefs, no anything which we could back up on. But the good thing, which our previous APEC people who went from 1993, they talked. Look in, they talked. So all their interventions were on minutes, on APEC official minutes. So we went back to all those APEC official minutes from 1993 up to now, to the website. I had a good team, all Mangi, all girls call, rousing. So we started putting them. So when we started putting them, we started mapping out. Okay, so this is what we said, this is what we said along the way right up to 2013. This is what we're going to do going forward. We're under the MTDP3 and how Mangi thought at this particular working group, all that. So the people who went before us, they did very well and they set up the foundation upon which APEC 2018 was based upon. Okay. Now, in terms of your question number 2 on the foreign policy white paper, the Department of Foreign Affairs has courage over that and responsibility blow lo come up on them policy agendas. When you get into the workforce, do not be intimidated by your superiors who might be not in the same caliber as you. Once they see you coming, oh wow, university graduate, Namil, Trango, grade 12 as well. Masih down press him and stop at corner. I want to advance him. That was what happened when university graduates started filling up a public service in the 1990s. Most of our bosses, one had degree, plenty blower, they had certificates from this international school, this diplomas from this. So no, as human nature, they would have felt threatened. So that would be one of the stumbling blocks in our government system. When you're going, no, you might write. Also, I don't know how you will manage it, but if you start writing briefs, just draft them accordingly, because some bosses have the tendency of putting their names to those things and saying me writing. Okay, so the formulation is spearheaded by Department of Foreign Affairs, which is why the foreign policy white paper, the eminent peasant group who were tasked with writing up and formulating the foreign policy white paper was based out of Department of Foreign Affairs. Now, the implementation part of it now becomes a whole of government approach. So I'm not sure how many pillars are in the current foreign policy white paper draft. And based on those, let's say if there were 5 pillars, then out of those 5 pillars, you will gather your team and start looking at the whole MTDP4 and seeing where you break up the MTDP4 pillars into those pillars again, and then moving go down. And there are funding implications to those two. So once you understand it, it's going to be an interesting idea. And all of you have done already getting there with under Mr. Eger and the team's tutelage with your foreign policy thoughts. I hope that answered your question, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Essie, and thank you, Mr. Ako. Our next, yes, the next person is Valentine. Valentine, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Ako, for the very insightful presentation. I'm sure we've all learned something from this, especially even from a practitioner like yourself. I have 2 questions. So these questions are directly related to your presentation. You mentioned that something about there wasn't a talk on foreign policies or drafting up a foreign policy by the government since the policy of friends to all and enemy to none until this time during the introduction of your presentation. So I'm interested to know why our government hasn't thought about drafting up a foreign policy leading up to this one, white paper, policy white paper 2025. That's my first question. My second question is also regarding your presentation. You mentioned something about active and selective concept of foreign policy. So, I just wanted to ask you to further emphasize on both the active and selective engagement concept, so that we can better understand what this concept means. Thank you.
Yeah, good one. Okay. On your question number 1, the friends to all, enemy to none foreign policy was from 1975 up to 19. I think I'll answer them together. Friends to all, enemy to none foreign policy was the one which Chief Somara's government put in from 1975 right up to 1980. Now, by 1980, I'm going into question number 2 now. Answering the question. By 1980, the government shut down, the government and the Foreign Minister Ebiawale Wale, and said Julius said, "Listen, we've been a country for the last 5 years, and I think we know who our friends are. Now, who we don't want to deal with. So let's come up with a foreign policy white paper now, where we can really focus on our friends." So that's how the foreign policy white paper was first ever foreign policy white paper was written on active but selective engagement, which means that we are not going to go out and be friends to all, enemies to none, but we are going to have friends. We will pinpoint who our friends are, and we'll go and engage with them. Pinpoint which organizations which we need to participate in, and we'll go and engage with them. Now, in terms of 1982 right up to now, why there has not been any foreign policy review or what, I will leave that thought with the bureaucracy and the foreign minister. Like I mentioned earlier on, it depends on the foreign minister. Suppose foreign minister, let's go Lulu south and Lulu north. And then government change, new foreign minister come in and let's Lulu north and Lulu south. So imagine if you were a bureaucrat working under those ministers. You'll be like a yo-yo, first doing this, talking with these people and the embassies around here, and all of a sudden tomorrow the foreign minister says you start talking with the other ones up there, and then turning back said go all Narpla. So that would have raised some uncertainty. Maybe that was one of the reasons why no papers were done, but no white paper plans were done, but the bureaucracy just went based on where the waves pushed them to. One of the reasons why the divine words foreign policy course had an impact on pushing the government towards doing the foreign policy white paper was based on the geopolitics of the last 5 years. We can only assume. I think the bureaucracy was looking for a push, and then the push came into the divine words foreign policy program and the publication of the book, which made up those lectures. So once that book went out, immediately, I was at a business council breakfast, and I had published the book the previous week. So when I went purposely with a couple of copies, and I gave one to Prime Minister Marape, who graciously accepted, and one to Chief Secretary Pomalim. And then from there, within a month, we started hearing about the government to review the foreign policy and all that. So people will have their assumptions on that, but I'm strongly convinced that this program pushed the government into doing the foreign policy, and now we will have a white paper coming out. Look, we can talk about the consultations that were not done with academia. Okay, but it's water under the bridge. What we can look forward to is that we will now have a plan by September. And for people like you and I, it's exciting times because the plan will drive the agenda. And, the plan has been made by a group of coaches, or the selection panel working with the plan. This is the plan which we will play with. It hasn't been tried yet. So the onus is on the government, bureaucracy, and the people of this country. Kisim this plan and go on implement it. If we don't score tries and we are wooden spooners for the next 2 seasons, that's okay. Along the way, we'll refine it, bring in new players, or listen, we are lacking in the defense department. We are lacking in the attack. Okay, train people. If we don't have the funding to do it, let's be realistic. Go to bilateral partners na ask him lo halibin. The reason why the bilateral partners are around the developing well is because they have they are providing their technical expertise as part of their foreign policy again to provide development aid. So we must use those to attend. There are other school of thoughts who are saying that it's about time you stand on your own feet now and do it. But how can we stand on our own feet when you may not take a house? Obviously, they may not take a house. I, as a parent, will not go, but I'll send my children, go to the hospital, uncle, nah, just go visit. Uncle will feed you. And when they ask how daddy, just tell him, daddy, all right, then I can finish my stuff. That's how we do it. It's life, and you translate that life into our policy configuration. See, one of the one of the reasons why when the late Chief Secretary Manasupe, God rest his soul, when he asked me why the average age of my 20-man team at APEC was below 40, I told him, Chief, it's simply because we are Melanesians, and Melanesians respect their elders. So all girls na boys me pick him, me big brother bro. So when I call them for meetings, so when I ask them to do things, all about walking by. Imagine if I brought in someone older than me. Me, I'm a very traditional Melanesian person, and I respect my elders. Man, mane ba me karam kam, he might be my he works under me, but because me respect him, maybe I'm okay, big brother. Listen, write him to something, but him or you taking time in the writing. And if he doesn't do it, how am I going to scold him or even sack him? Which is the reason why I brought in those kids, and those kids looked up to me as their big brother, and we had a really exciting time. You know, I could call them in and blast them, and then go and do stuff because we were working against a timeline, and we instilled a family spirit within ourselves. And the other departments were having issues with the Melanesian culture. Our other departments were having issue with the Melanesian culture, so. We managed that by getting Chief Secretary to call those elders into his office to tell them that now you are gonna throw in line because I'm all boss here. Now, if you cannot do it, then you might be asked to step aside. So, see, there are ways, in our family lives, if you cannot talk to your parents because so and so is happening, you can see your uncles and aunties, his siblings or her siblings, and they'll call them up and all but talk. So, when you look at the foreign policy formulation, it's all about partnerships. Partnerships upwards, downwards, and sideways, domestically, internationally. I had a team of 120 between 2015 and 2018. I had a inner team of 20, and the other 100 was made up of the other people from the other departments, whom all two were also second and third and fourth preferences, which was to go working with APEC. And then not only that, we had our other team, one team member each from each of the 20 member economies around the world. So those were our contacts whom we went through in terms of bilateral engagement and whom we went through in the APEC process. So if a word came and said that we need to ask funding from this particular economy to support us in this policy agenda, then we will go and see our contact from that economy. Say, hey, John or Andrew, no, we have an issue here. And then John or Andrew will put it up through their system. And when our senior officials or ministers went to the APEC engagements, they would go during bilateral. I'll talk about bilateral meetings later on as we go along. We will go to bilateral meetings and raise those agendas, and an agreement will be done and work upon. So it's about engagement. So, but in time, yes, foreign policy happened because of geopolitical configuration and because of domestic priorities. And then the active and selective engagement came about because the government thought that we already had friends, and now we had to select who we would invite into who of these friends we would invite into our kitchen. Usad ba imi Lucindo lounge room? Usad ba imi imaitim kamo garan? Usad ba imi tohalo lemlo gate? That's selective engagement. You can interpret the government's friends to enemy to non-engagement now in that manner. Some friends, by you looking long way to high, you're right morning, walk past. Some friends. Other friends, you'll shake hands and hug. Other friends, you'll invite for lunch or tea. And the real closer friends, you'll invite to the lounge room of your house, na pipasinan story na family bokong tayo. Those are all friends, but then we differentiate the friendship. That's how I would look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Akon, Valentine. We now move on to Zola. Zola, we give time to Zola to ask a question or make a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Yagiora. So thank you, Mr. Ako, for the presentation as well. So from my understanding, I do understand that Papua New Guinea has made significant progress towards finalizing a foreign policy white paper. So my question is, given the frequent changes in government leadership every 5 years in Papua New Guinea, in your professional opinion, how often should the foreign policy white paper be reviewed or updated to remain aligned with evolving national interests?
Well, thanks for that. The foreign policy white paper will have to be endorsed by Parliament. So once Parliament endorses it, that's it. You can have ministers change every day, but now the bureaucracy will say we have a paper plan to work on. So that's your personal opinion, sir. We will do it this way. So that safeguards the bureaucracy in going forward in doing it. Now, in terms of reviewing it, there are usually midterm reviews, maybe every 4-5 years, midterm reviews and long-term reviews. But if you are implementing it, you must take note of all the engagements you attend and do assessments on them. If you go for an agriculture meeting abroad, or if there's a group of investors are invited by a minister to come and look at the SEZ undertaken, or other investments one of our earlier colleagues was talking about. We must maintain reports and assessments on those. Those are the assessments that will determine whether a review takes place or not. Because the high level intent said, let's go back to the French to enemy. The high level intent of a foreign policy right now is French toward enemy to none. So that's French. So that's the high level intent. So which means that on face value, we have to be friends to all and we mustn't be enemy to anyone, which means we will sit on the fence, which means that when we go to UN conferences, UNGA, General Assembly, you abstain from voting because you are friends to all, enemy to none, regardless of your personal opinions. So you see, all those things are there now. But then at the bottom, you notice that MIPLA will friends to enemy to none, but some land all give visa upon arrival or some countries na MIPLA no, but MIPLA must have visa yet. While MIPLA go on to country, MIPLA just bring in our passport and they issue us a visa on arrival. So how then do you implement that foreign policy with all these configurations happening, hanging all over the place? So the foreign policy white paper that will be endorsed in September will highlight all those things. So the work of the bureaucracy now is to, in implementing it, you will come up with your interpretations of what those pillars mean. And that's the beauty of it. You will call in your team together at certain levels, call in a team together, and then come up with the operational agenda on how you interpreted pillar 1, pillar 2, pillar 3, pillar 4. And for any department that is entrusted to implement it, you will now have to restructure your department according to that plan. There is no use picking a rugby league going on a rugby league tournament with a team full of netballers. That was what we had between 1982 right up to those constant changes of foreign policy intent. No, and this effect, you have a fluent French speaker, but you send him instead to New Zealand or to Fiji. You have a fluent Chinese speaker, but you send him to Solomon Islands on posting. Those are things done. Of course, he might be a fluent Chinese speaker, but he's also an expert in. He's also a subject matter expert on the MSG, That's why he goes and goes to the Solomon Islands. That might be so, but those are the other configurations you need to see also to judge all those. So the foreign policy white paper will be endorsed by Parliament, and then copies will be given out to everyone. And for us too, no, the best example is I said the divine word. We're going to get a foreign policy white paper, and then from next year or from October or November onwards, Mr. Aguirre, when the foreign policy white paper comes out, our course will be over, right?
I think it will be around September. We'll still be having classes. November,
Okay.
November, October will be the end of the semester.
Okay. Then that means that for our next 2026 semester lecture, it will be structured around that new foreign policy white paper. So what we're talking about in this session will be using that definition. The definition which the EPG came up with, and it will be endorsed by Parliament. That will be the definition which we must teach in all our schools. This plainly also now, regardless of whether you like him or not. I mean, if they send you to go and play with the Titans, you less, but you must go because I'm playing goals, and you just have to go. Knowing very well you might not win plenty games, but just go because those are the definitions which you must teach by. So that's how we will do it. Okay, so Zola, I hope that I've answered that. It will be endorsed by Parliament, so there's not going to be 1 + 1 will be 2. 2.5, 1.5, as soon as that foreign policy paper comes out. And it safeguards us in our dealings internationally and the domestic.
Thank you, Jolan. Thank you, Mr. Ako, once again. Now we move on to our next person in line is Jemima Miskawas as a question comment.
Thank you, Mr. Yagera and Mr. Ako. I have two questions. The first one is, what are the key governance structures that influences PNG foreign policy? And my second question is based on Mr. Ako's presentation, the first slide on the definition of a foreign policy stated how government's general objective to effectively manage its bilateral and multilateral relations internationally through diplomatic means, negotiations and agreements and all that. So when this failed, the government resort to military. So my question is, why do government resort to military actions? Thank you.
Maybe I'll answer your second question first. I think you answered it yourself. Government resort to military action because negotiations failed. But jokes aside, governments resort to military actions because of the whims of the leader if negotiations fail. Or sometimes negotiation options stop yet, but they'll go, just like the Ukraine-Russian thing. It happened that way. There was still room for negotiation, but we don't know the inner workings of the policies on the ground there. So that's now in terms of key structure. Did you mean policies or structures? Government structures. Did you mean government policies or government? What did you mean by structures? Government structure.
What I meant by the government structures are the authorities or the government departments that influences PNG foreign policy.
Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, so the government structures and the main structures or agencies that influence foreign policy will be, I think, all of them. The whole government system. When you look at it, the whole government system influences our foreign policy because foreign policy, traditional foreign policy was based on international relations. But now, currently, foreign policy undertakings are done through aid. Or when you look at our development partners like Australia, JICA, the France, because the formerly USAID, those were the agencies that drove their country's foreign policy development agenda. So once they came into Papua New Guinea, their development agenda would cover the whole social sector, which means Department of Education, Department of Health, community development, all of those would now be involved now. So you will have funding going into gender-based violence or gender equality. You have funding going into agriculture, water projects, sanitary. This was something. So foreign policy today covers the whole government structure. And the good thing on Papua New Guinea's side is that we have the MTDP4 from this other side to guide it. So if a development partner wants to put a water project and it goes up to the national planning to provide a proposal, then the MTDP4 will guide the national planning in saying that this will go that way. But that's domestically. Now, for the development partner to get a foot into the domestic arena, he has to go through the Department of Foreign Affairs or DITI, International Trade Investment, or the IPA, or the National Trade Office or Tourism Promotion Authority to make that initial contact before they are directed into the domestic arena. Okay, so I hope I've answered your queries correctly.
Thank you, Zimmerman. Thank you, Mr. Ako. We have a comment from Jerome. Comment or question? Jerome will specify.
Good morning, everyone. I have a comment, and the comment will lead to a question. So my comment is regarding social media post, which is in line with our topic today, NOMAD, in which Prime Minister James Marape claims that the real meeting in the
Jerome is having some technical issues. Okay, it's back. Jerome, please go ahead. Can you just go over or repeat what you said?
all right. Can you hear me? All right, my question. My question is that regarding those noble people making some headlines on the media regarding this kind of claims, I think that my question is there some factors contributing to the lack of knowledge on foreign policy history, or or is it just negligence by those noble people? Thank you.
So sorry, Jerome. I didn't get the first part of your comment and question. I did hear a breakup of you mentioned social media or something, but then your voice broke away. Could you repeat the first part of your comment and question, please?
All right. My comment is that I have seen social media post on Academia Nomad, which is in line with our topic today on foreign policy. And the post said that in the post, Prime Minister James Marape claims that he is the first Prime Minister to hold a bilateral meeting in the White House. But then Rabi Namoli has also met with George Bush Senior in 1990. So my comment is, it is as a future journalist and policymakers, it is important that we know our foreign policy history, because it will help us to make a better judgment and better judgment when regarding bilateral meetings and diplomatic relations. And that leads to my question. Is there some factors contributing to the lack of knowledge on foreign policy history, or is it just negligence by people? Thank you.
That's a very good question, and I think it covers your personal attitude to personal attitude to the workplace. Prime Minister, when Prime Minister Marape mentioned that the most important thing the journalists or people who should have done should have contacted his office and provided that alternative idea, saying that whoever you mentioned, whoever mentioned this, but we have on record that say Rabi also met. No, that everyone doesn't need to know about that. But then politics, so they have political competition going on. So the other side would have saw it and corrected him publicly. But if I was in the situation, I would have, which I do. Both Mr. Aguirre and I are members of a particular WhatsApp group, and sometimes we discuss. If he says post something and I find that no, there's an alternative to this, I tell him privately, or he does the same with me. Something you post him, but there's another information here. So then I immediately go into the public and withdraw it or correct it. So that's how we should do it as professionals. Which brought me back to the previous when I mentioned that when you attend meetings, provide your assessments, and these are the assessments that will contribute to those news. When this thing comes, I said, no, hold on. There was an assessment done a couple of years ago when there were a couple of others who went to the White House to do this. So, Jerome, I hope I've answered that question.
All right, thank you, Jerome, and thank you, Mr. Ako. We'll stop here. We have 2 minutes remaining. It's going up to 11:30. So we'll have Stella Marie, Philip, Kappa, Kaylin, Lamonai, Valerie and Novatina on Friday. So on Friday during our session, we start off with your questions and comments, and then we'll go into the Q&A discussion with Mr. Ako, and then we'll open the floor for questions, comments afterwards. So we will do that on Friday. So keep your comments and questions, and we'll come back fresh on Friday and kick off the session with your Q&C, so comments and questions, and then we go into the discussion. So, Tasol, thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Mr. Ako,
Thank you,
joining
Ogata.
us for joining
School
us all the
boot.
way from Mosby. Yes, I'm sure they are now into the school work. It's the third week now, and
Mm.
we've gone over the disruption of the TESAS, ECAS.
I saw it.
Yeah, the issue. So thank you very much, all of you,
All
for
right.
joining us, and you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you again on Friday.
Bye.
Bye.